Yeah, like it was going to be that easy to get rid of me. 50 Shades of Grey is a fucking terrible movie. I mean, a seriously fucking terrible movie. The screenplay is awash in cliches and meanders aimlessly from one scene to the next. The characters don't make any damn sense, even in the very generous context of what is essentially softcore porn. It's not particularly sexy, by the way, and, I kind of hate to say it because on one level, sure, we're all real glad that a female filmmaker gets to have her name on a big box office hit like this, but it's really unimaginatively staged and directed. Sorry. Which I guess is the second most authentically porno-esque thing about it, apart from having a leading man who's in crazy good shape with zero charisma and even less authentic chemistry with his leading lady. It's dull, it's dreary, basically nothing of interest happens outside of some laughably staged bondage scenes that apart from the nudity wouldn't feel out of place on an especially sexy episode of Silk Stockings, which I'm probably the only person who remembers. And overall, the whole damn thing is a complete waste of my time, your time, and everybody else's goddamn time. Literally every second we spend talking about this movie is time we could all be doing anything, and I mean fucking anything else. That having been said, I'm not sure what the big deal is supposed to be. I don't mean with the movie itself. It's based on a book that apparently everybody read, huge publishing phenomenon. It's the first major erotica movie to hit screens from a major American studio in like decades since the twin box office bombs of Jade and Showgirls back in the 90s sent the whole genre scampering back to Cinemax, so that's kind of a big deal. It's touching, however awkwardly, on some socially delicate issues of abuse and consent, and it has the lurid appeal of allegedly offering mainstream audiences a peek into the mysterious world of BDSM culture. I get why we're talking about it, is what I'm saying. What I don't get is why the movie sucking is such a big fucking deal. Movies suck all the time. Why is everyone so eager to hear critics like me or whoever rip this one apart? It can't be that the spectacle is all that compelling. There's so little meat on the bones of this thing. Ripping it apart is like trying to wrestle a goddamn cloud. It's just too insubstantial to get worked up about. At least with the Twilight movies, you had vampires and all that vaguely Mormon abstinence mysticism to get worked up over. The worst things that can be said about 50 Shades of Grey, outside of pointing out basic filmmaking incompetence, of which there's plenty, is that it's problematic as hell in terms of its central narrative, which displays so little understanding of the type of relationship it depicts. It ends up both fetishizing what amounts to a serial domestic abuser dressing up his violent misogyny in the trappings of BDSM culture, along with a trite Beauty and the Beast riff, and stereotyping said culture as abusive sociopaths who need to be saved from their own pathology and abusive childhoods, which is kind of bullshit. But that's not the fun, gleeful bread and circuses kind of ripping apart people are looking for. That's just depressing. So otherwise, why is this the pinata right now? Because absent any other rationale, it feels an awful lot like people, mostly guys, sorry, but it's fucking true, want to go off on this particularly shitty movie particularly hard because it's a chick thing, i.e. it's aimed mostly at women, directed by a woman, book from a female author, etc. I'm not trying to start some shit, I'm just saying that's what it feels like. I mean, terrible movies based on popular source material of dubious quality happens all the fucking time, and we don't call down an airstrike for every single one of them, so what's up with this one? But yeah, since I don't have any stupid-ass gender hang-ups about who makes or is the target audience for this movie, the most interesting thing about 50 Shades of Grey to me is that it so clearly could have been a good film, or at least an interesting one on its own terms, if anyone involved had given half a shit. Once upon a time, and not even that long ago really, the erotica genre was right up there with horror and martial arts in terms of the most imaginative filmmaking spaces. Whether or not the quote-unquote classics of the genre like The Story of O, Sex and Zen, Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS, Emmanuel, or the collected works of Andy Sidaris were objectively good is debatable, fine. It's a common rule of thumb that art tends to degrade the more simple, primal, and base the sensibilities it's appealing to are, and what's more simple, primal, and base than fucking, but they embraced the lurid, tacky, often sleazy spirit at their core, and came out pretty memorable as a result. Sure, 50 Shades is based on a junky airport book that started out as Twilight fanfiction, but so friggin' what? The Godfather started out as a junky airport book that was basically true crime fanfiction. Look what they made out of that. The kind of go for broke, embrace the cheese and sleaze approach that informed the gonzo erotica classics I mentioned a moment ago could easily have taken what is really nothing but the story of a literally virginal bookworm somehow actually named Anastasia Steele falling for what is basically Hugo Boss Batman, only to discover that he's a romance-averse BDSM dominant with an off-the-charts mommy complex, and elevated it into something at least as deliriously fun in a trashy pulp way as, say, Basic Instinct or whatever. But unfortunately, director Sam Taylor Johnson seems to be under the tragic impression that she can escape the source material's inherent awfulness by dialing everything back into some kind of polished respectability, where the only trace of the kind of self-accepting, subtlety-be-damned playfulness that might have salvaged this crap is a visual gag where Anastasia walks out into a rainstorm after meeting Christian Grey for the first time. Get it? Unfortunately, the old saying holds up true. You can't polish a turd, but you can make it pretty by dressing it up a bit, which this film elects not to do. Look, people, this is one of those terrible movies that we're going to be puzzling over the success of and tittering at parties over how embarrassed we were for treating it like a big deal at the time years from now. But for today, for right now, it's really just a dull slog, unworthy of all this discussion, not worth your time, and certainly not worth my time. It's made its money, we had our laughs, it's not going to be culturally relevant again until like a decade from now when a whole generation of kids with mid-October birthdays start realizing, to their horror, that they probably got conceived right after mom and dad got home from this piece of shit. For now, can we please move the fuck on to something else? Anything? Please? See you around.